So today I'd like to talk a little bit about Tantra massage and the three main blockages that I have seen in my clients as well as in the students on our courses in women. Yeah, like I said, it's been a topic that's been coming to me naturally, and I have already, without going into too much research or thinking, I have had a vision of what I need to talk about, what are the three main blockages that I mostly see, and how I want to approach this topic and shed a light on it from different perspectives. So from a perspective of someone who is practicing Tantra massage, from a perspective of someone who is studying Ayurveda, and from a perspective of someone who is a medical doctor. So again, to everyone, welcome from my side. My name is Rock. I am one of the teachers in the Alchemy of Living and one of the therapists as well. I am, like I said, by education a medical doctor. Although already during my study years, I realized that I'm not really interested that much in the Western medicine. I'm more interested in somehow more of an alternative approach. I was interested in the energy. I was interested in the spirituality, and my path led me to some pretty cool places. And in the end, I ended up studying the Tantra and Ayurveda. And what's interesting is that the Tantra is the spiritual science that incorporates energy. So it's kind of like the spiritual science of energy, and Ayurveda is the healing science that uses energy. So it's the healing science of energy. So I ended up in these two fields, and I'm pretty happy that I ended up in here. And one of the first things that I've started studying when I began my journey in Tantra is Tantra massage. And I have, by this date, I have almost 3 years of practice with Tantra massage. I started with small 5-day course, such as the one we teach in the Alchemy of Living. Then I began in the next years, I did 2 Tantra massage therapist trainings. I did Tantra massage teacher training, and I did Tantra massage advanced therapist training. I've also been practicing Tantra massage as a therapist now for a little less than a year, and I've been a teacher for, I'd say, half a year now. As a therapist, I have noticed some of the themes repeating themselves, and themes around blockages repeating themselves, and I felt a need to address them with you guys, and also to shed a little bit of a light on what Tantra massage really is. And I guess this would now be a good time to also talk a little bit about what is Tantra massage. So like I said, Tantra is the science that uses energy, and Tantra massage is a form of a body work, a form of a massage that has its roots both in Ayurveda as well as in Tantra. And its aim is to, again, use the energy for spiritual as well as healing purposes. So in Tantra massage, we teach you firstly the form of body work, very like directly on body, where we teach you certain channels that we use and certain points and how to use them to release and open the body. And then we also teach you how to work with the energy. So as I was practicing Tantra massage in the last year or so, or in the last 3 years, but in the last year as a therapist, like I said, I realized that there are certain blockages that are very common. And when I speak about blockages, what really is a blockage? So blockages are they come in different ways. There are different kinds of blockages. There's a blockage at the level of the physical body. You have some knots or some, as we call them, spaghetti You can have certain tension in the body. You can even have some discoloration or some redness or whatever. Then the blockage can come in terms of psychological blockage. Blockage can come in as an emotional blockage, and these are very common. So people have emotional blockages that correspond to the certain level of the body. And then also blockages can come as energy blockages and even spiritual, like at the level of the spirit there is a blockage. How I approach my massage is I start most of the times I start on the back, and this is where the first blockage is that I will speak today is located. So now I will move slowly towards the 3 blockages. So the first major or most common blockage that I see is a blockage that roughly corresponds to the level of the upper back. So the area, you could say, goes from starts at the somehow below the rib cage, and it ends up in the neck. So this is an area where 100% of the times I find some sort of blockage. Now it's not the whole area. Sometimes it's the whole area, sometimes it's just the neck, sometimes it's just the shoulder, sometimes it's just the shoulder blade, and sometimes there is a very specific blockage that I will mention a bit later. And if I go more into reasons, I can also shed a light on where these blockages are. So the reasons for blockage in this area, I have identified 3 major ones. So 3 major reasons for blockages in this upper back area. But the first one is stress. This is the first one, and you will find that basically in everyone nowadays, because everyone is too stressed. This blockage corresponds to the level of shoulders and shoulder blades. This is why most people have tense shoulders, or they have knots in their shoulders, or knots around their shoulder blades, or even as I said earlier, this spaghetti type of physical blockages at the level of the shoulder blades. So I would like to here go a little bit from the other side and draw your attention to the words that we use to describe a person who is constantly stressed. What do we say? What kind of a temperament is that person? In Slovenia, where I come from, we use the word choleric. This is a choleric type of a person who is constantly stressed. I did my research, and in the English language, you also use a word bilious person. Did I spell that correctly? Bilious person. Bilious person. So both bilious person and choleric, basically these are the same words for, or the different words for the same kind of temperament. This is a temperament of a person who is very stressed out all the time. And what's interesting is both the bile as well as chole correspond to what? Correspond to something that is being produced in the gallbladder. So if you don't know, the gallbladder is an organ that lies below the liver. And what I've noticed is, so not what I've noticed, but what I have been taught by my Ayurvedic teacher is that there are different channels throughout the body, and they correspond to different energy frequencies, and they're connected with different organs. So guess where the channel that corresponds to the frequency and the organ of gallbladder is located? At the level of the shoulder blades and at the level of the shoulders. So when a person is stressed, what happens energetically really? What happens is that when a person is stressed out, and this is not just the people who are by temperament more of the stressed out persons, this is you, me, anyone who gets stressed out, what happens is the mind taps into the frequency of the gallbladder. And of course, stress is not all bad, but it becomes a problem when it's too much of a stress. And what happens is the mind taps into that frequency, and this channel, which is the conduit for that frequency, it gets energized. And it gets energized and energized and energized. But if the stress is too much, then the energy starts stagnating. It gets locked. It can't move anymore because it's too much of the energy at the level of that channel. And this is where the block at the energy level starts forming. And once the block at the energy level starts forming, the energy starts spilling downwards into the physical body. And what happens is we get a contraction at the level of the physical body. So we get these knots, this tension, and again, this spaghetti at the physical body. And like I said, I see this blockage in virtually everyone who comes for the first massage. And the good news is that virtually everyone after the first massage also gets rid of that block. So that's a good thing. And I can tell you a very, very interesting example. I had one lady who, after the massage, we did a follow-up on her. And I think it was 2 or 3 days afterwards, she called me and she said, you know what, I have to tell you something. And she described some other things that I won't go into, but I have never felt more at peace with myself. My husband even said, oh my God, you look amazing, you feel amazing, what has happened to you? You've totally shifted, you've never been as relaxed as you are. Until she came to her workplace and she sat down behind her computer that she works at. And then she said, watch what happened next. I sat down behind my computer in my job, and suddenly I feel this kind of feeling behind my shoulders and this tension and I locked in again. And this is there I realized how relaxed I was before then, and then suddenly I got into this contraction. And this is where I said to her, well, I'm very, glad you were relaxed, and I'm sorry for this stress, having claws on you. But I'm glad to do more massages with you, but it's not really the massage that will help you here. What will help you is either acting externally, which means changing your environment, or acting internally, which means changing the way you perceive external stimuli. So like stress in the job, you can either feel stressed, or maybe you can go into a form of, I don't know, you respond by action, for instance. And this is where working with the mind has a lot of like a deeper effect. So this is where something like yoga or meditation would be better to do than massage. So this was the first reason for blockage at the level of the upper back. So stress, very common, and also quite easy to deal with in some ways. And now I'll go to the second reason of why this blockage at the level of the upper back is formed, and these are emotions. When I mean emotions, I mean the unprocessed emotions. Now, most people have, to various degrees, certain unprocessed emotions. And it's interesting that in Ayurveda, there is a lot of teachings that this area of the body, which is connected to the heart, and when we speak at the area of the upper back, this is the back of the heart, is actually connected with certain processing of emotions. It's not the emotional center per se, but it is connected somehow to emotions, and they flow through that part of the body. And most people have experienced, again, to various degrees, some kind of adverse emotional reactions in their life, where maybe emotions were too strong for them, or maybe it was too painful, and they locked that part of the body, and again the energy is now stagnating there. So from my experience, what I have seen in that area of the body is a very specific type of a blockage. Mel, if I would mention it to her, would know exactly what I talk about. It's almost like a congestion at a certain level of the back. I won't go into details too much now. And what's interesting is that most of the times this area of the back, so on the back, is connected when the release comes. The release comes in the form of a deep sadness. Most of the times this is the deep sadness, and you know, people start having tears, and that's coming more from my intuition and my experience. When I talk about the female clients, what I perceive in them is that this sadness is in some way connected to I would best describe it as regret, or feeling that they have let themselves down, feeling that they have done something in life that was against themselves. What I mean by that is maybe they picked a relationship and they were happy and they were, you know, they were really in love, but that relationship kind of went down and got really mechanical, and they do not want to live that way, but they don't have the strength to listen to themselves, or they don't have the strength to, I don't know, to speak their truth to their partner, for instance. Or maybe they wanted to pursue a career and that they really felt was for them, but they opted for a safer option, for instance. And again, this kind of sadness of letting myself down comes up, this kind of regret, remorse of doing something wrong. But on the other hand, what I feel also, that there is a big relief with that. So once this sadness goes out, there is a big relief happening, and the person breathes better. I mean, this is the back of the rib cage. So, you know, once the blockage gets out, it's a big relief for one to have. So Matt is looking at me here. Everything okay thus far? Perfect. So the third blockage, or the third reason for the blockage at the area of the upper back, is sedentary lifestyle. It's very simple, but it's true. It's sedentary lifestyle. Most people sit too much and for too long. And you know, the way we are behind computers, and you go this and you slouch and you crouch, and that's not good. And you know, the body then gets kind of like in the muscle memory, you know, becomes like that instead of like that, opened. So here massage definitely helps, but what helps even more is to stand up every 30 minutes, do a walk, do some stretching. I mean, you can even do something simple like that, you know. If you know some yoga, even the stretchy kind of yoga would be good here, to kind of train the muscles, or to prevent the muscles from training themselves in the wrong way. So much about the blockage on the level of the upper back. Let me just check if I forgot to mention anything. No, this was the blockage. This was the first blockage at the level of the upper back. The second blockage that I see, again, 99% of the times, is at the level of the lower belly, or the lower abdomen. Now here we find, and we know, as this is one of the tantric teachings, that there are two centers at that level of the lower belly. The first center is connected with emotions, is also connected with the sexual energy, and then there is also another center which is a little bit higher, kind of like at the level of the belly button, and that center is connected more like to the ego, it's connected to willpower, it's connected to also metaphysically speaking, as well as quite practically, to the element of a fire. And when I speak about fire, I speak about fire that person can have as a temperament, as well as a fire that is kind of like digestive fire. So when I do therapy, what I see most common is that this second center, the one connected with the fire, is not energized properly. And there is almost like a physical, not almost, but there is a physical huge blockage below the belly button. And because this center, the fire center, is not energized properly, the energy stagnates at the lower center. So that sexual energy, that emotional energy, has no outlet, and it stagnates at the level of the lower belly. And what women report massively nowadays is that they feel pain in their lower belly. They feel this kind of congestion, and it's like something is, you know, bothering me or pushing me, or it's like annoying. They might feel, because it's emotional center, they might feel overflown with emotions. They might even be depressed. What you also see quite commonly is that they have certain genital or genitourinary problems at that level, because the energy is stagnating, and it's this kind of like once the energy stagnates, it becomes a little bit of lesser quality, and this is not good. The energy has to flow throughout the body. And yeah, so when they come for the therapy, what I see, what happens is that I guide that energy to that second center, to that fire center, and energize that area. And what comes up for most clients is that they experience anger coming up. They experience irritation, and that's pretty funny, because you know, when I was a novice, when I was new to this Tantra massage, I thought I'm doing something wrong, because the lady is clearly irritated right now, you know, and I'm just trying to do my best doing a therapy. But what I realized, actually, this is irritation, because this energy center is being energized, and it's connected to the ego. And when people, you know, forget about their egos and don't have it energized, they become irritated once it gets back. But that's a sign of a progress. So like I said, anger, irritation. Also what happens is laughter. Laughter happens. And I had a client who called me after the first therapy, and she said that after the first therapy, she started making love with her husband, and suddenly something switched here at the level of the belly button, and she bursted into laughter, like the kind of laughter that she didn't have for, I don't know, 10 years, for the last 10 years. So, and she said both of them started laughing, and she then had a huge release. She said that she felt like it's almost like millstones, you know, moving in her belly, and she had to go to toilet multiple times. And this is very common, that after first few therapies, people have certain digestive symptoms. So either they go to toilet a lot of times, or it's a bit diarrhea-like when they go to the toilet. Because why? Because the center, that fiery center that I speak about, is also responsible for the digestive fire. And in Ayurveda, we know that digestive fire is the fire of life, really. That you can't have, you know, you can't be vital, you can't be, you know, productive, you can't be dynamic without having that fire, because that fire is responsible for absorbing, and, you know, first for burning the food that comes in and transforming it into the food that goes into the cells, and then absorbing it in. And when people don't have that properly energized and have a problem at that level, that has an effect on basically on every cell in the body. So why is that so prevalent? Why is this center so not energized properly? I believe there are many reasons for that. One reason that is quite simple is the food that people eat. You see, this center is at the level of the belly button, and there is the small intestine here, and then there is the large intestine here, that are very important. And what happens is that people eat food that hampers their digestion, and that causes the digestive fire to slowly diminish, and it has an effect on their personality and on their mind as well. The food has very, very deep effect on the mind. And if you don't believe in that, I suggest to you, you go look into the brain, the gut-brain axis, which is one of the most one of the most hottest topic in modern medicine is the gut-brain axis. How what we eat determines what kind of gut flora we have, and how what gut flora we have then determines what kind of neurotransmitters will go on in our brain. Yeah, think about it. What we eat determines what kind of neurotransmitters will be produced and will go like what the level of them will be in our brain. So you want to cure the depression? Start with your food. You want to cure the anxiety? Start with your food. And this is what Ayurveda says all the time. You want to cure, I don't know, your anger? Start with your food, because it's all connected. Yeah. So let me just check. Okay. So it's very important to pay attention to what you eat and how you prepare the food as well, because everything has energy. Even how you prepare the food is very important. So this is one reason for why many people have problems of this digestive fire and have it hampered. The second reason, which is a little bit different, is more like a psychological reasons. And what I've noticed is that most women in therapies, they have this center that is connected with the fire and also with the ego. They have it kind of like clamping down on the sexual energy. So it's almost like they are not allowing, the ego is not allowing the sexual energy to rise higher to the heart. So and in that way it's making that sexual energy, or that also emotions, to stagnate. And this is then a cause of a lot of troubles, like I mentioned earlier. And it's also, I think what's important now to say also is that when I speak of the sexual energy has not necessarily anything to do with the sex. Sexual energy has to be is your primal energy, and sexual energy has to flow throughout the whole body. So when the ego is clamping down on it, you're basically robbing yourself of that energy flowing to the higher centers, and you're robbing yourself of, because higher centers are more spiritual, you're robbing yourself of spirituality. So the reasons for why that is so, I guess we will have to look into more deeper psychology and into the way our society is and how we grow up and how no one teaches us how to deal with that energy. So that would be another topic on its own. I'll just take a small sip. So, like I said, most women that come to therapy, they have a blockage on this level. Compared to the blockage on the back, this one is a little bit harder to deal with. Normally it's not at all dealt with in 1 or 2 sessions. It needs more time. It needs 5 sessions really. It also needs a person to adopt a different lifestyle, to adopt a different diet, to start doing a lots of yoga. Because in yoga, and I think Mel, you will teach these things in the online course, yes, we have special practices that deal with pulling that energy from these lower centers up to the higher centers. And we have special practices that also energize this center of fire, this chakra really. And Mel will talk about all this more in detail in the yoga and the yoga module. And it's really important for a person to not just rely on the therapy here, but also to do their own practice. And Tantra yoga, like I said, is a yoga of energy. So you deal with the energy and you use it then to kind of bring it to different levels and to start controlling it. So what's one thing that I want to also mention here? Let me just a second to get my thought back in. That was important. Yes, one thing that I also want to mention here in regards to men is that most men also have a blockage at this area. I talk a lot about what Mel is experiencing in her therapies with men, and what I'm experiencing in my therapies with women. And I hope Mel at some point will offer her own live talk about the three main blockages in men. But one of the major blockages that men have is again at this between this sexual center and the ego, so kind of like in the lower belly. And you can, if you have a partner, you can maybe massage them a little bit below this belly button, and you will see that they have a lot of like almost like a rock there. They have like quite of like a lot of tension in that area. And from my experience, it's this blockage is one of the major blockages for men, preventing them to be to connect sexuality and spirituality more, because they can't leave the sexual energy, you know, because they don't have this third center energized. They don't have enough of fire to sublime this energy in the lovemaking. So it's also very important for men to address this. And I think you will mention this, Mel, at some point. I think we'll. Okay. So this was the second blockage, and now I'd like to come to the last one, which is which is the blockage at the level of the throat. So when I do therapy, I start with the back, I then move to the front. Most of the times I work a lot on the back. I can work even 2.5 hours on the back. And then I turn the person around and I work on the front. A lot of times focusing on that area of the lower belly. But once we go past that area and the energy starts flowing and it comes to the heart, then it gets blocked at the level of the throat. And it almost seems like the throat is like a bit of a narrowing energetically for all women, really. What I've seen coming back to my medicine years already at that time is that every time I got a blood test from some women, be it 15, be it 20, be it 25, or maybe 35, 50% of them had issues with thyroid gland. And I was like, okay, guys, but don't you see there is a little bit of a, you know, I mean, I wasn't on endocrinology department. I was in the family doctor department, GP department. And this was normal population. This wasn't specific patients coming just for specific problems. This was like normal population. And then I talked with the doctor, like, why is it that what, like maybe 50, maybe 30% of the women, but a lot of women, young, healthy women, have issues with thyroid gland. Most of the times it's under functioning. Sometimes it's hyper functioning, but it's like the hormones are out of order. And when I came to Tantra, I realized that this is this blockage is almost like a on the level of the population, especially the female population, and it has reasons that are of the energy nature. So it has an energy reasons. And I know many women that I've been on my journey of Tantra with that have had to deal with that blockage extensively. And in my therapy, once I got over the first two blockages that I mentioned, most of the times I then spent time at the level of the throat. So what are the reasons behind it? There are some explanations both in Tantra as well as in Ayurveda that are quite in depth. The tantric reasons I'm not even allowed to share because this is being taught in some other courses, and the Ayurvedic reasons are I guess in some ways too complicated to go into right now. But what I can say is that in the therapy, what I see is that this blockage can be dealt with, but it's also important here to incorporate yoga. There are specific practices, specific asanas, and I think, Mel, actually you're using one of these asanas in the free daily online yoga that help energize this this center here, this throat chakra. She will also teach more about this asana on our yoga course. So yeah, to make it a little bit more juicy, I can also say to you that that's just maybe more of my experience and my opinion. It's also, you know, very important, if we have any men with us today, that you allow your women to express yourselves, to put out the sound, and to not be all ooh when the woman puts the sound out, especially if it comes to more of a pleasurable sound. Because what I tend to notice is that when a woman nowadays, when they make a sound of pleasure, many men already go and they lose, you know, they kind of lose their control over their energy, because the women starts, you know, being vocal about their pleasure or pain for that matter. So what's important is to allow and to, you know, to build your own masculinity and to allow your women to express herself. And when I mean by expressing herself, I don't mean just by talking, but I also mean by like more primal sounds or whatever. And even when it comes to lovemaking, to allow the women to, you know, to express the pleasure and or whatever comes up for her in that moment. This has been quite, I believe, for myself, but also for many men that have experienced that, or for overall, I can say that this is one of the biggest gifts for men, when you see a woman that, you know, has kind of a release on that level. Even when you're giving a massage, you can see that happening. And it happens even on our, you know, basic 2-day or 4-day courses. And it's a pretty beautiful thing, you know, especially for a man, because you feel, now it's like the result is here, because I'm working on an energy level of the throat, and she's, you know, going into this blissful state. And I can tell you from my own experience on my first course, this was one of my experiences that was really beautiful when giving the massage. Yep. So much about the 3 blockages. I think I have covered them all. I was a little bit fast, I see, but I guess it's my first time, and I reserve the right to do a little bit of mistakes or whatever. So now I will relax, and I will let you ask me any questions or comments, and I will just enjoy with you all for the next few minutes. So